Henry Kissinger is back in the news, even though he's 1,000 years old. And he's a war criminal, as we'll get to in a second. Just so everybody knows, I don't say that lightly. That's not a charge I throw around lightly. That's just a fact in the case of Henry Kissinger. Again, we'll get to it in a second. But look at what he said now, which is why he's in the news. I think this is from the Daily Mail. A nuclear first strike of North Korea is tempting, says legendary U.S. diplomat Henry Kissinger, as Kim Jong-un warns Trump is pushing towards war. Kissinger, 94, he's 94 years old, warned that North Korean denuclearization was vital. He said that relations with Kim Jong-un's country have reached a key juncture. The U.S. must now choose between preemptive military action or increasingly tighter sanctions. He said his warning came before North Korea warned that the U.S. is pushing the whole world towards a nuclear war. So I love how, they're even being upfront about it right there. They're saying Kim Jong-un is arguing the U.S. is being very aggressive and they are pushing us towards war. And what's the response from Kissinger? Kissinger's not saying, oh shit, maybe we should reel it back in because this guy thinks we are going to start a war. He's like, nuking them is tempting. What? Okay, you have to understand that only proves their point when they say, no, we're not going to give up our weapons because we need it for a deterrent because you might attack us. They're so stupid and so myopic, they don't even get that basic fact. And I need to give credit to somebody right now because very few people do it, but they should be giving credit to her. Tulsi Gabbard is one of the only U.S. congresspeople who has been saying this loud, aggressively, and repeatedly. She's been like, no, Kim Jong-un is not an offensive threat. You want to know why he wants to keep his weapons? Very simple. He saw what the U.S. did in Libya. He saw that, Gaddafi was like, oh shit, these motherfuckers just toppled Saddam in Iraq. They might topple me next. Here, America, take my weapons. Gaddafi gave up his weapons, and the U.S. went in and toppled him anyway. So why would Kim Jong-un be like, here, I'm going to give up my weapons? Because he knows that soon the U.S. is going to topple him anyway, especially if he gives away his weapons. So he has his weapons as a deterrent. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is one of the only congresspeople who admits that publicly and says it repeatedly. She's dropping truth on everybody. But you know who admits that all the time? The deep state. Everybody in the CIA admits that. All of our generals admit that. They're like, yeah, we know. They want it for a deterrent. But we don't care. We want to topple them anyway. What? So, in other words, they're not an offensive threat against us at all. But we still saber rattle. Why? Because we want to do regime change. Because they're not under the arm of our government. They're not under... They haven't had the corporatization of their country yet. They're not under the control of the U.S. and our empire. So they're a rogue nation. So that's why... So all the fears about human rights abuses in North Korea, are they legitimate? Yes. The North Korean government is horrendous. Horrendous. They treat their people terribly. But that doesn't mean that we should go in there and topple the government. In fact, we shouldn't do that. If the U.S. wanted to stop death and destruction around the world, easy way to do it. Stop arming Saudi Arabia. Stop aiding and abetting the genocide of Yemen. Again, I don't use that word lightly. Saudi Arabia is committing a genocide in Yemen. 100%. They blockaded the country. They're not allowing food and medicine in. People are literally starving to death. Millions of people. Over 1 million people have cholera, which is preventable, but we're not letting in the medicine to cure them. And they're bombing mosques, they're bombing hospitals, they're bombing schools for the blind with U.S. weapons and our help and pointing out, hey, bomb here on the map. So, as Noam Chomsky says, if you want to stop human rights abuses and terrorism, there's an easy way to do that. Stop participating in it. That's what Noam Chomsky says. You're responsible for the bad that you're doing. That's what you're responsible for. We could all feel terrible for the people in North Korea and what Kim Jong-un is doing to them, but there's nothing we could do. What are we going to do? If you topple him or go to attack him, he immediately takes out Seoul, South Korea. So right off the bat, conversation over, analysis over. Okay, there's nothing we can do. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? I mean, there are ways to try to undermine the legitimacy of the government, but you have to go in the opposite direction. The way you do that is to establish a connection with them, establish trade with them, let them slowly open up their country, and then when people in that country realize how much better everybody else in the world has it, I mean, they don't even have fucking electricity at night. It's not hard to defeat a regime that's a hermit kingdom that oppresses their people if you expose their people to the way the rest of the world works, and if you shine a light. You can have their people overthrow their government. That's your best bet. If we attack from the outside, all of a sudden, that makes them circle the wagons and defend their government. That's the way it's always worked throughout history. It doesn't matter how shitty the government is. If there's an outside invader going after the government, everybody circles the wagons in the country. That's what's going to happen. So, Kissinger's he's fucking floating the idea casually of nuking a country. So you want to kill millions more people. That's what you want. And the reason I said the word more is important because now we're going to get into Henry Kissinger's record. So this is reported on in The Intercept. There was a great book that dove into all the details of what Henry Kissinger did and why he's a war criminal. But this is from The Intercept. Let's see what happened, what Kissinger's record shows. So they say, let's consider some of Kissinger's achievements during his tenure as Richard Nixon's top foreign policymaker. He, 1, prolonged the Vietnam War by 5 pointless years. Right off the bat, hundreds of thousands of deaths are on his hand for that alone. He, 2, illegally bombed Cambodia and Laos. By the way, killing countless civilians and not caring about the civilian deaths. The civilian deaths were the point. 3, goaded Nixon to wiretap staffers and journalists. 4, bore responsibility for 3 genocides in Cambodia, East Timor, and Bangladesh. I need to pause on that one. They're not saying that lightly. He's responsible for those genocides. He told them, go ahead, wipe out the civilians. I don't care, and here's weapons so you can do it. 5, urged Nixon to go after Daniel Ellsberg for having released the Pentagon Papers, which set off a chain of events that brought down the Nixon White House. 6, pumped up Pakistan's ISI and encouraged it to use political Islam to destabilize Afghanistan. 7, began the U.S. arms for petrodollars dependency with Saudi Arabia and pre-revolutionary Iran. 8, accelerated needless civil wars in southern Africa that, in the name of supporting white supremacy, left millions dead. 9, supported coups and death squads throughout Latin America. And 10, ingratiated himself with the first-generation neocons such as Dick Cheney and Paul Wolfowitz, who would take American militarism to its next calamitous level. A full tally hasn't been done, but a back-of-the-envelope count would attribute 3, maybe 4 million deaths to Kissinger's actions. But that number probably undercounts the victims in South Africa. Pull but one string from the current tangle of today's multiple foreign policy crises, and odds are it will lead back to something Kissinger did between 1968 and 1977. Over-reliance on Saudi oil, that's Kissinger. Blowback from the instrumental use of radical Islam to destabilize Soviet allies, again, Kissinger. An unstable arms race in the Middle East, check, Kissinger. Sunni-Shia rivalry, yup, Kissinger. The impasse in Israel-Palestine, Kissinger. Radicalization of Iran, an act of folly, was how veteran diplomat George Ball described Kissinger's relationship to the Shah. Militarization of the Persian Gulf, Kissinger, Kissinger, Kissinger. And now this guy, by the way, the most maddening fact about this, given everything you know here, you wouldn't want to be in the same state as this motherfucker. Hillary Clinton bragged about having his approval when she ran for president. She acted like, what do you mean? What's the problem? Yeah, Henry Kissinger, American hero. Kissinger is friends with Hillary Clinton. She's taken advice from him, listened to him on various policies. And by the way, this is why Hillary, one of the reasons why, she's a massive hawk. Always been. Orchestrated the destabilization of Libya, the toppling of Gaddafi. Look at what happened in Honduras and Haiti. She supported and probably still supports intervention in Syria against Assad, despite the fact that the rebels are virtually all jihadists at this point. Supported the Iraq War, the Patriot Act, all this stuff. So you have the Republican Party, by the way, they also love Henry Kissinger, of course. But you have the corporate Democrats love him too. So a guy who's a clear war criminal celebrated in the U.S. Celebrated. And now casually he discusses, hey, maybe it's attempting to do a nuclear first strike and kill millions of people in North Korea. How fucking sick are these people, man? That's innocent people. Regular people, women and children. You know, kids who they send off to school, people trying to work to put food on the table at night to look after their family, people who eat, sleep, breathe, fall in love with each other, build lives together. He said it's tempting to do a nuclear first strike against a country that didn't attack us when he already has millions of bodies that he's responsible for, dead bodies. And you wonder why our political system is fucked up. Because the position is rampant militarism and imperialism. We're bombing 8 countries right now. Right now. Nobody talks about it. Mainstream media doesn't talk about it. Very few people talk about it. We're killing innocent people all the time. And we're wasting our money in the process. And our own soldiers are dying. They're just pawns in the grand game being pulled on them by elitists in the military-industrial complex. Everything you've been told about your government and how they care about human rights and freedom and democracy, it's a lie.